organization, we stopping on Satan and open mic, we call it SWorks. Action on Taylor, the killer verses. I do on my feeling, no city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Running schools for the kids, we the city every lady. All I know is it's work, work hard, keep it busy. Know the life can be tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky is the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, SWorks. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. SWorks, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. Saying SWorks, what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping on Satan and open mic, we call it SWorks. Action on Taylor, the killer verses. I do on my feeling, no city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Running schools for the kids, we the city every lady. All I know is it's work, work hard, keep it busy. Know the life can be tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky is the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, SWorks. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. SWorks, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place, and S works what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social, social works, social works, social works. Social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it SWorks. Action and Taylor, the killer verses. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Private schools for the kiddies. We the city, and we litty. All I know is it's work. Working hard, keep it busy. Know the life can be tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social, social works, social works, social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we in for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, S-work, do your thing. S-work, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. S-work, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. S-work, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, S works. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. S works, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. And S works what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social, social works, social works, social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it SWorks. Action and Taylor, the killer verses. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Private schools for the kiddies. We the city, and we litty. All I know is it's work. Working hard, keep it busy. Know the life can be tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be.
SWorkshops are a series of online workshops featuring the many incredibly talented friends of SocialWorks. This series aims to inspire and educate, bringing local and national creatives live to your smartphone. They will be sharing and teaching specific aspects of their craft. A wide variety of professions, interests, and hobbies are represented within our curriculum. Did we mention it's a fundraiser too? The stay-at-home notice has students wondering what's to come. For some, graduation and prom will both be canceled. This campaign will directly fundraise a celebration event for those students within the Chicagoland area. Once it's safe, of course. Tune in to any of our socials for one or all of the SWorkshops. You can find the full schedule of programming at socialworksshy.org or on our Instagram. Classes start Monday, April 13th. We'll see you there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Reesheda Graham Washington, and I am so excited to be with you today on Social Works and to be participating in SWorkshops. There's so much good happening right now in what we know is an otherwise really challenging time. And so we just want to make sure that we are still being present to our communities and being thoughtful in how we're connecting with one another, even though we're still practicing social distancing. this is a perfect time to be discussing the power of with, transforming communities through social enterprise. And so today, our overview for the hour will include a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about asset-based community development, economic development, and equity, or what I will refer to as ABCDE square, as a methodology or framework for how to connect with our communities, and how to do that in a way that creates economic development and equity. I think it's one thing to connect with community and to be together in our relationships. It's another thing to ensure that that kind of interaction and connection is happening in a way that fosters vitality, social enterprise, and community transformation. So we'll take a look at ABCDE squared as a methodology, and then we'll talk about the practical application of ABCDE squared. I am the proud CEO of Live Cafe and Creative Space, which is located in Oak Park, Illinois. And Live is a coffee shop that really embodies the methodology of ABCDE squared. So you'll get to hear about how to take this from just a mindset or a model into the integration of the ABCDE squared methodology into a community space like Live. We'll talk about a few distinctions between LLCs and NPOs and all that fancy lingo for how to do business well together in community, and the ways that we can have community development and a community have impact on a business, and how a business can also have impact on community. And I'll speak to you from personal examples of how we've been able to do that through Live as a coffee shop and creative space. I want to hear from you. I want to make sure that what we engage in our hour together today definitely responds to some of the questions and comments that you have. So please, 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 I encourage you on your social media platforms to be asking questions, making comments, and I'll be responding to those as much as I possibly can in our hour together. So let's jump in. Just to give you a little bit of context about myself, again, I'm Reesheda Graham Washington, born and raised in the Chicagoland area. I grew up in the Austin community on the west side of Chicago, and that particular neighborhood continues to be near and dear to my heart. As such, Live Cafe, the coffee shop, is in Oak Park, Illinois. And Oak Park is one community west of Austin. I'll talk to you a little bit about what I refer to as the Robin Hood effect as a part of the model that I used to develop the coffee shop, where I was very intentional about planting the coffee shop in Oak Park, but I'm equally as intentional about doing my hiring, leadership development, and all of that good stuff in conjunction and partnership and relationship with communities like Austin, East and West Garfield Park, the Galewood community in Chicago. So yeah, I grew up in Austin and started a school there. Plato Learning Academy is there. I was the founding school principal there. And so you can see like this kind of hyper local way of being that I have been very intentional about embodying. And I think that really does speak to the way that asset-based community development works. So we'll jump into that a little bit. So again, ABCD stands for asset-based community development. And what that is essentially a way of being that shifts our mindset from a community having a scarcity mentality and talking about our communities in ways that sound as though there's nothing there or is desolate, or this needs-based way of thinking about our communities, to an asset-based approach where we start to look to see where the gifts and resources and talents and skill sets lie within our community. And the only real way for us to know where those gifts and talents are to be present in our own communities, to be in relationship in our own communities, and to get curious and ask questions about the people and about the resources that are present in our communities. And so asset-based community development really causes us to think about what people's hands are up to in the community. Literally, what are people doing in the community? What are they focusing their time, attention, and efforts on in the community? What are they touching with their hands in their community? And then the second H is head. What are people thinking about? What are they engaging in? What kinds of conversations are happening? What are they wrapping their heads around? And then the last H is their heart. What is the community passionate about? What does the community want to see for itself? How would the community speak about its own thriving? One thing that I hope that you hear in these three H's of hands, heads, and hearts is that it is the hands, heads, and hearts of the people who live in the community that we want to seek after, that we want to listen to, that we want to hear from. And asset-based community development mandates and requires that, as opposed to models where people typically come from outside of the community into the community who know very little about the community and then are using resources to do what they think is in the best interest of the community. What asset-based community development does is it challenges us to engage with the people who are already there and to trust that they are already up to a work in their place, in their space, and that they have the wisdom and the genius to sort out what their own priorities are and their own expressed felt needs are, and that they should be the ones to mobilize those desires rather than having some disconnection between people coming from outside the community, superimposing things to be done to the community, things to be done at the community, things to be done for the community. This is the community working with the community itself towards its own transformation. So I learned a lot about asset-based community development from John McKnight, who was one of the, let's say, forefathers of this notion of asset-based community development. And he really worked to put language around it as a principle and to codify that language, originally through Northwestern University. And now there's an ABCD Institute at DePaul University. So if you're interested in learning more about the ABCD model, DePaul has an amazing center around asset-based community development right here in Chicago, where you can learn more about that. When I encountered ABCD, I was really excited about the way that it focused on the assets of the community, the way that it talked about communities from a space of abundance and resource, and the way that ABCD as a model really empowers the community to take care of itself. But I felt like there was something missing because the reality is that if we're just building community relationships and we're having Block Club parties and we're celebrating being together, while that's really beautiful, that in and of itself will not transform nor sustain the vitality of a community. And if a community is suffering by way of resources in terms of like not having enough businesses, not having enough job opportunities and this kind of thing, asset-based community development as an expression of relationship alone will not shift that paradigm at all in terms of thriving businesses, work opportunities. And we know that those things are really important to have as a part of the community as well. So when I started to work in asset-based community development, I added an E and squared that E. So ABCDE squared is how I refer to it now. And that E squared stands for economic development and equity. My question is always, how is the practice, principles, and implementation of asset-based community development building economic development and equitable opportunities in community? That to be together and be in relationship is beautiful, but it's not enough by way of creating sustainable vibrant communities that are thriving economically. And we certainly know that is a component of a holistically thriving community. And so when we add economic development and equity, we have to start thinking in terms of whose voices are being heard and what historically, traditionally, and intentionally marginalized people groups are or are not being a part of the transformative process. Are we including voices that have been traditionally neglected by a community as we think about community transformation? And are the methods and activities that we are buying into or implementing truly shifting the paradigm in terms of economic development? Is more money going to be generated in the community? Are there going to be more thriving businesses so that people have places to shop and places to work? Are dollars going to circulate within that community at a higher rate of frequency than it has before, because people typically have to take their money to go other places to shop and other places to work and other places to have their being. And so those are things we really want to look at when we're looking at asset-based community development, is tying in economic development and equity as well. So that gives you a general sense of sort of what asset-based community development is all about. I'm taking a look at your questions already. And one person is asking, what are the community relations like between Austin and Oak Park? And I would say what's true of any two communities or neighborhoods is that that's a big question, and that it has a lot of levels and layers and complexities. I would say that there's a lot of work being done synergistically between Oak Park and Austin in terms of faith-based entities working together. There's the Leaders Network, for example, where faith-based and community development leaders come together to talk about how to create synergy between Oak Park and Austin and how to create a thriving relationship between those two communities. And as much as I will say that, there continues to be inequitable presence in the police force and the way that certain circumstances and situations are addressed and handled between Oak Park and Austin. There is dialogue of equity happening all the time around that issue. And Live Cafe and Creative Space, my coffee shop, is a place where pre-COVID and definitely post-COVID, those conversations will continue to happen. But I think this idea of the intersection of transformational community work and social enterprise really speaks to how we can work together to address community relationships and community involvement when we have enterprises with emphasis on community relationship and community transformation happening. And so that serves as a segue, as I've talked about some of the theoretical methodology of ABCDE squared, to talk a little bit about Live Cafe and Creative Space as the practical application of ABCDE squared. Methods are only as great as the implementation and our willingness to practice and integrate those methods into reality. And so Live is a coffee shop that's been around for about 3.5 years. And prior to opening the coffee shop, I did a lot of community listening in Oak Park and in Austin to find out what the expressed felt needs of both neighborhoods were, so that whatever we created in our space would be responsive to what the community was asking for. And to that question of what are the community relations like between Austin and Oak Park, there was a lot of expressed felt need around these two communities having a space where they could interact and engage that didn't feel like it was owned by one community than the other. And so we developed the coffee shop It's at 163 South Oak Park Avenue, so it is in Oak Park. And that was by design. I chose to put it there because there are lots of financial resources available in Oak Park. And to the tune of the redistribution of power and wealth, I thought it would be really important to root the coffee shop in a place that holds significant power and wealth, and to then redistribute opportunities, network, and access to that power, wealth, and resources by way of hiring and building relationships and connectivity between the coffee shop that's located in Oak Park and the people and community in Austin. So we did a lot of PR and marketing to make sure that people who live in the Austin community were aware that the coffee shop was coming and that it was just as much theirs to access and to connect to and to network within, and that we wanted them to feel as comfortable doing those things in the coffee shop as the people who live in Oak Park did. My concern when I opened it initially was that if I opened it in Austin, Oak Park would be hesitant to come to Austin to build those relationships. And so that was a second reason to launch the coffee shop in Oak Park, because I wanted to create that intersectionality between the two communities. We sell products, coffee, tea, sandwiches, soup, salads, and all of that. And when you come into the coffee shop in the daytime, it operates just like any other coffee shop. But we also hold these very intentional gatherings and events in the evening where I curate and facilitate interconnectedness between the communities on difficult topics of conversation, like how these two communities have existed, coexisted, or not in their history, and how we can work to overcome some of those challenges that the communities have had in coming together in the past. But we've also supported women of color who were running for office in Oak Park. And every woman of color who ran for office in Oak Park was able to use the coffee shop as a central headquarters to organize their campaigns. Every single woman who did that from the coffee shop definitely did win their seat. And so when we talk about playing our part in shifting the paradigm of community, live as a space that people have come to understand as a place you can go to work to shift these paradigms, particularly on behalf of and in synergy with historically, traditionally, and intentionally marginalized people groups. So we keep our doors open by some of the events that we have. We keep our doors open through the products that we sell. But we also keep our doors open by offering a membership to individuals in the community and organizations in the community to become a member of the coffee shop, because in this day and age, the odds are definitely stacked against small businesses when we have so many big box corporations taking over the landscape of business. And so we've been very transparent in the gift and service we think we offer and provide to the communities around us. And we've been transparent in naming the difficulty associated with continuing to do that in an ABCDE² framework without the support of the community. Over the last 3.5 years, we've offered so many opportunities for people to learn and stretch and grow and build in relationship together, that they now see the value of that, and they pay it forward through a membership model that creates viability and sustainability for us. The community now sees itself as part of the live community, that they take ownership of the space, that they also plan and organize events and gatherings in the space. And because we have this sort of shared accountability to the space, it takes some of the pressure and onus off of the small business owner to have to carry that business on their own. This is the essence, the true essence of social enterprise. Taking a look at some of your questions here again. Thank you so much. Someone just said that they love my glasses. Thank you. I appreciate that. The cafe is located at 163 South Oak Park Avenue in Oak Park, Illinois. 163 South Oak Park Avenue in Oak Park, Illinois. Someone just asked the question, what did you learn during your time as a principal and educator? That's a really good question, because it really, that experience helped me to shape and form so much of who I am as an entrepreneur. So as a principal, as an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, a manager of schools, especially in Chicago, one thing you will become is very resourceful, because central office is a big place that's serving the needs of over 600 schools in the city of Chicago. So if we are just as educators waiting on central office to solve the problem for us, that could take more time than we have. And so you become very nimble as a school leader. You become very entrepreneurial and innovative as a school leader. And a lot of those skills that I learned as an education administrator were transferable to the work that I do as an entrepreneur. The other thing that I think I learned is how important building relationships was to my work as an educator and administrator of education. I was always working with other principals, working with other school leaders and administrators, sharing ideas, and taking theories and shifting them to practical application within my school community or within several school communities as an assistant superintendent. And so all of those kinds of skill sets were really shaped and honed in me as a principal and education administrator. And all of those skills I was able to transfer into entrepreneurship. I would say any school leader worth their weight in salt, in fact, any educator, is already entrepreneurially minded, because you have to be so innovative, creative, resourceful, and collaborative to do the work. So those lessons really served me well, and continue to serve me well. The other thing is, because I'm curating experiences, teaching and learning experiences with community members all the time, the work that I did as an educator in terms of curriculum development, lesson planning, backwards mapping, and assessing and evaluating for learning, all of those skill sets inform the way that we implement and facilitate learning gatherings and connections in the coffee shop. So I like to joke and say that the coffee shop is my classroom, minus the papers to grade and the assessments, the state standards and assessments that come along with it. That feels very much like a win-win for me. Someone else wanted to say, real quick, hey, Pastor Jay, I see Jonathan Brooks. Thank you so much. I love you. And then there's a question, how do you find your employees? So in the beginning, in year one, before we opened, we put information about our opening and our desire for a hiring protocol. We put that in all the local papers. And then we did like this speed round of hiring where we brought in community members who knew what they wanted to experience in the coffee shop, and we included them in the hiring protocol process. So they were able to kind of speed date about 20 candidates who were interested in working in the space. We definitely prioritize places like Austin, East and West Garfield Park, and we continue to do that to this day. And the community got a chance to give us input and feedback on who we brought on to the team. From there, we've continued to emphasize bringing on women, and particularly women of color, so that I can lead alongside them, because we want to develop entrepreneurial energy, synergy, and capacity in the young women who come to work at the coffee shop. As a result of that kind of hiring practice and protocol, we've had many of the young women who have worked at the coffee shop to go off to college. We've had many of them go on to become directors of nonprofit organizations. We have 2 who have gone on to start their own businesses, and those businesses are still thriving today. And I continue to be in relationship with them through mentoring and coaching as they go on to do other things. It's important to note that we're never bringing our employees on as baristas and leadership learners, expecting them to stay at the coffee shop for a long period of time. It's our full expectation that part of our model is to be seed sowers, to be developers, leadership developers, and to have the coffee shop serve as a launch pad for young women to go on and do the things that they dreamed of, and that they would be empowered by the model of leadership they experience, and that would inform their leadership practices as they move on. And then that creates another space or seat for someone else to come and learn and grow in that way. Hey, Mickey. Mickey is saying hey, and she is a prime example of a young woman who came and honed her skills through Live and RGW, and now owns her own consulting firm and is doing an incredible job. That's what the Live community is all about. I want to talk a little bit about the reciprocity that's born out of having this sort of synergistic relationship between social enterprise and the community. So one of the things that comes is that because we are a social enterprise who are focusing on the community, there's a lot of progress that's born into the community. I talked a little bit about the employees and the impact the space has on them, but there have been countless businesses that were born within Live Cafe. People who were writing their business plans and developing Montessori schools, marketing companies, co-working spaces. These are just three that I can think of off the top of my head that launched their business out of the coffee shop, just working there every day in collaboration to build something additional in the community. We serve as a hub of innovation, and people know us that way. We're branded that way. And as such, people come there looking for other people to connect and relate with on a hyper-local landscape. We have also served as a hub for reconciliation. When community members who work in leadership together aren't seeing eye to eye, I've even opened the coffee shop after hours to have reconciliatory conversations so that we can get to a restorative place to do the work we've been charged to do together. We've also done reconciliatory conversations when we're having discussions around equity and how to make more equitable access to resources across Oak Park and Austin. Those are conversations that people know us to have. So innovation, reconciliation, and then the last one is celebration. When people get married in the community, we have a party at Live Cafe. When women win political offices, we celebrate that at Live Cafe. When we have holidays like Valentine's Day, we hold events that just celebrate the relationships that are thriving, and we foster those relationships at Live Cafe. And so the community has come to know us and expect for us to be that kind of place on their behalf. As such, they feel the value of our presence. And I'll just give you this example. So obviously, we're sheltered in place. Governor Pritzker has determined that all non-essential businesses should be closed. I believe that Live should be closed right now. I care deeply for the people we serve. And so I think it is in service to our community that we not be open right now. But people were very concerned. What will happen to Live if we're not able to be open to provide our goods and services? Multiple times since the coffee shop closed, the community has made donations that has helped to fortify the coffee shop through this really difficult and trying time. And so that really speaks to what a community has the capacity to do for its businesses on its own behalf when we rely upon each other more than we rely on institutions to help us. If I was waiting on the bank to bail me out right now, I would have a really challenging situation on my hands. And while it continues to be challenging, it's less challenging because of the contributions the community has been willing to make on our behalf. Someone asked, how can people from around Chicago support Live? Thank you so much for the question. Again, we have memberships that are available online. So if you go to our website, which is www.exclamation.com. The memberships are right on the homepage, and you can look to see the various different memberships we have available. That's a way to support Live even during the shelter in place. Obviously, we'd love to see your face in the place once we open again. And again, we're located at 163 South Oak Park Avenue. And we want you to come and be a part of the Live community. We want you to experience some of the events and gatherings and connections that Live fosters. And so thank you so much for that question. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between LLCs and 501c3s and why we chose to be an LLC rather than a 501c3. This is really important. There's a place in the world for nonprofit organizations to exist. Obviously, Social Works is a nonprofit organization that should exist. And I think the way that organizations like Social Works operates is meaningful because it calls the community into itself to think in terms of what we can do to produce outputs that really support a larger context of people. That's amazing, right? So as I said, I was born and raised in the Austin community, went on to go to college and went on to go to grad school a couple times. And I become one of those statistics where people say, people like me and people who look and sound like me, who come from communities like Austin, Garfield Park, Inglewood. I know Jonathan Brooks was on a little bit earlier, that when we leave and we go and we experience college, then we don't come back to service our communities and to help to create buoyancy in our communities. Well, sometimes we go on to be executive directors of nonprofit organizations, and maybe we're doing that work on a national landscape. But when we leave that organization is owned by a board of directors. Okay. And so that doesn't look like a direct contribution to our communities, because when we leave that organization, we haven't planted anything specifically in our community, and we can't correlate ownership to any entity in our community. Live Cafe and Creative Space is an LLC. I serve as the CEO of the company, as a Black woman. I think it's really important for us to be intentional about ownership, equity, and sharing in the development of more leaders who look and sound like me. I think ownership is important to the vitality of economic development and equity. And that was the reason that drove my decision to launch Live as an LLC. So it is a for-profit entity that I own. Here's the important part. Because I own it doesn't mean that I have to extract from it. So I don't take a salary from Live Cafe. Everything that Live makes goes back into Live, into the business. We're always thinking of ways to make it better. We're always thinking of ways to create more programming. So even though it is owned by me as an LLC, because of the redistribution of power and wealth that I think is so important and vital to the work we do, I still pour back into it just like I would if it was a 501c3. This is a model that I think is important because it creates more ownership opportunities within our communities for us, by us, that look and sound like us, while still giving back into the community rather than extracting from it. And so I share that because I think we have to be thinking about really thinking about new ways of doing business in ways that continue to make our work profitable, but making it profitable to the end of still transforming communities and advancing leadership for people, particularly who look and sound like me. Someone wanted to know, Lydia Ridgway wants to know, how can we get involved to volunteer during quarantine? My goodness, you all, everything is so digital right now. And I'll be honest, a lot of small businesses haven't had the time to fortify themselves in this way. There are small businesses who need social media, who need marketing, who need operations manuals, all of that digital work that you can do from home on behalf of a small business or a small nonprofit that's trying to get its sea legs about itself. This is a way that you can do that. Reach out to small businesses with the skill sets you have. Again, this is asset-based community development. What can your hands do? What can your head think of? What's on your heart? Connect those three things, and where they intersect, reach out to those businesses and nonprofits to discover what you can be doing digitally and technologically to support businesses. Again, helping them to develop operations manuals, helping them to develop social media campaigns. We don't want people to forget that we exist because they've been on hiatus for 1, 2, 3 months by the time the shelter in place is over. How can you help them magnify, amplify their presence and their voice digitally so that when they're able to open again, people have not forgotten them? This is one really good way to get involved and to volunteer during quarantine. Another way, if you can do this while also social distancing, all of our businesses are closed, which means that this is a really good time for upkeep and maintenance to occur. If you know how to paint, if you know how to clean, if you know how to organize, these are services that you might be able to offer if a business owner is willing to let you into their space for you to do some of that stuff, one person at a time, 2 people at a time, distance from one another, to help with the upkeep of space would be wonderful. And then I'm going to be honest with you. Right now, fiscally, small businesses are struggling. Make donations to small businesses if you still want to see them around post-quarantine. If there's a way for you to continue to pay a membership or a service that you were paying for before and you still have the fortitude to do that, send the money even if you don't get the product so that the product will still be available to you once quarantine is over. You can also buy gift cards and use those once the company opens again. These are just a few ways that you could come alongside small businesses to support them now. Another question, as a business owner, how hard was it to suspend operations in the interest of your customers? Well, I will tell you, when I heard Pritzker's announcement, I wept for lots of reasons. I didn't know what that would mean for the coffee shop. I knew that I would miss being around my community, who I love so much. I didn't know how we would be able to be connected. I wept for my employees, who I wondered how they would be able to live and eat and survive us suspending our operations. It was a very hard thing to be with and experience. I will say again that it was the right thing to do, as challenging as that was. And we found ways to be together. We have digital happy hours where we get together online and we engage in community in those ways. We have brunches that we hold digitally. We've held digital birthday parties for the communal aspects of things. And with regards to operations and the business and fiscal aspects, that continues to be hard. We've applied for PPP funds. We went through the first round. Most small businesses did not get resources from that cycle. We're in the process for a second cycle through. I want to give a shout out to Brandon Johnson, the Cook County Commissioner, who's done an impeccable job of staying connected to small businesses like Live. And I think in terms of volunteerism, you can reach out to local politicians and encourage them to be thinking about how to support small businesses in your community, because this really has been hard on us, and it continues to be. There's no mistake about that. So yeah, we continue to be grateful for the ways that the community has come around us to support us. We ask that you would continue to do so. We are definitely not out of the weeds on this at all. And we're hopeful for what future PPP and EIDL funding will lend us as we think about our needs in the future. Lydia, okay. Where can friends send their products? Commissioned art and all of that. Where can friends send their products? So the website is www.livexclamation.com, LIVEXCLAMATION.com. And we do commissioned art as part of what we, it's as part of how we intersect as a community. We have artists, different one each month, who commissions their art to the space. We normally mine for those artists hyper locally. So we've had artists from Oak Park, from Austin, from Garfield Park, from Berwyn, and typically they are representative of some historically, traditionally, and intentionally marginalized people group. We typically meet with them and then set up a month for them to be able to display their art in the space. So our art changes every month. And then we commission their art, I think, at 70% of whatever they sell it for. We also hold an evening with the artist every month. And so artists have the opportunity to be with community in the Live space, to talk about their art, to talk about its significance toward the promotion of their own pieces. No one can talk about their art better than they can. So we try to afford them opportunities to do that as much as possible. We also try to handle those relationships professionally, so that artists have an opportunity to really get to see what it's like to commission art pieces, and to have to do the business and legwork of running a business that is artistic, that is not always just about the brushes and the paint. Sometimes it's about the contracts and the insurance and building the network and building the brand and doing the right PR and marketing. And so we sometimes serve as that first entree into that aspect of the work. And it's been going really well. We've had the pleasure of meeting so many artists like B. Harris, and Brittany from Austin, Brittany Shields, and Brianna Shields. And it's been Antonia Rupert is another artist who's been in our space that we had the joy of working with. Vanessa Stokes has had pieces in our spaces as well. Again, all hyper local women of color, an amazing work in artistry and turning their gifts into a business and monetizing their gifts. Lydia, thank you so much. I hope that you will use that, and I hope that you will come into the space. We're definitely looking forward to having you there. Let me just see. Another question we have is, how do you think your business will change when it does reopen? I think that probably there will be many of our community members who already appreciated Live to a great degree. We will all value and appreciate it even more once we're back open. I think we will be reliant on technology and our online platform in ways that we hadn't thought about and were not leveraging in the past. And that will be a value add for the coffee shop as well. I think the kinds of conversations we curate and facilitate will be predicated upon the experience we just had with COVID-19, with sheltering in place, with what it means to be in proximity to one another, with what it means to engage using technology, and in terms of what we value and prioritize. These are the kinds of conversations Liv is always setting the table to have. And now I think there will be so many more people looking for spaces to reflect on this experience, to unpack some of what we have gone through as a result of COVID-19. And we're looking forward to being that presence to our community members. So that's one way. I'm excited about some of the innovations we've been able to think about on hiatus. So the menu will change. There will be new offerings, and we're excited about the surprises we'll have to offer by way of new product, just because we've had time to think about how to refresh some of those items on the menu. So that'll be fun and exciting as well. Yes. So I think as we're in this really interesting time where we want to be connected, but we need to be distant, and we want to be involved, but we have to be isolated, this is a really good opportunity for us to be thinking about who we should be contacting and asking them what their needs are. Someone is asking, how much startup capital did you need and how did you raise the resources? That's a really good question. So one thing is I changed my own lifestyle because I wanted anybody who was coming alongside me financially to know that I had skin in the game. And that will be different for all of us. What we have to lend to that process will be different for each person. But what I will say is that you should be able to illustrate that you are investing in yourself, and that the risk that you are asking a donor, a partner, an investor, or a bank to take, that you are investing in yourself and being willing to take that risk on your own dream or your own vision as well. So I had to alter my lifestyle and cut some things back in my life so that I would have resources available to have skin in the game myself. So I did that. I also worked with several churches and denominations and talked about principles of equity with them to get them to understand that this sort of mandate is a faith-based one. This idea of redistributing power and wealth is a faith-based practice, and that we needed to be making more connections with businesses and faith-based entities. That produced some funding for the startup capital as well. And then finally, I was able to connect with a community bank who helped with the startup capital raise. And the community committed by way of membership. Does Liv have any programming centered around young people cultivating bonds between generations? So we are big on InterGenerationality. Earlier in the show, Mickey Grace was on. Mickey's in her 20s. I am in my 40s. So there's a huge gap in age between us. And most of the women who come on this sort of leadership development ride with me are in their 20s. And I'm intentional about that so that we are pouring into each other. It's still a reciprocal relationship, even though I'm the older one. They have wisdom I don't have. I have wisdom they don't have. That mutuality and reciprocity of intergenerationality is something that we highly espouse to at the coffee shop. Oftentimes when we hold events, we will ask people to bring someone from an age range different than their own, or we'll market to two separate age ranges intentionally to bring them into the space together because we're seeking that intersectionality. And we were going to, before the shelter in place, do our first event called Little Women's Work, where we're working with young girls between 9 years old and 19 years old to talk about entrepreneurship and the skills of an entrepreneur to start sowing those seeds much earlier in their lives. Haley is interested in business and community. Here's how you can connect with me. I am on Instagram at Reesheda, ReeshedANGW. Reesheda NGW is my handle on Instagram. And the coffee shop's handle is at live exclamation, LIVEXCLAMATION. I also have a podcast, which is an intergenerational podcast with Mickey Grace. It's called Sold Out, SOULEDOUT, and it is on SoundCloud and iTunes. There are 7 episodes in our first season. And so if you've had questions, but you haven't had an opportunity to ask them, I would be willing to bet that some of those questions get answered and more information is revealed through the Sold Out podcast. I would encourage you to listen there. So this is what I want to make sure we understand. Oh, you can also sign up for the newsletter at liveexclamation.com, www.livexclamation.com. And come on in. We're at 163 South Oak Park Avenue after the shelter in place is done. But the more important thing that I really want you to think about is this whole campaign of SWorkshops is so that we can provide a citywide prom through social works. And I don't know, I can't imagine being a senior in high school and finding out there's not going to be a graduation, there's not going to be a prom, none of that is going to be available to us. And social works has been thoughtful enough to hear the hearts of young people in this way and to develop this campaign. So what we need you to do, if you're wanting to give specifically to that endeavor, is you want to text the word social works to 797979. Text social works with an S on the end to 797979. You can also give at www.socialworksshy.org/SWorkshops. And let's be the catalyst to ensure that our seniors get a prom once we can go back outside. This is the significance of the work. And this is very much in line with the kinds of interactions and engagements that LIVE is all about. So please, 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 if it is within your capacity, someone else was asking about how to volunteer. This might be a way. Reach out to social works and see if there's a way that you can be of assistance in that drive towards a citywide prom for our young people. So I just want to say that this has been remarkable, just to highlight some of the key and significant components. It's important for historically, traditionally, intentionally marginalized people groups to own things within their own communities. I encourage you to seek after LLCs and to have nonprofits support you in that, but do seek LLCs. Ask questions in your community about how people want to mobilize their hands, their heads, and their hearts towards asset-based community development, and make sure that those efforts are tied to economic development and equity principles. Make sure that the relationship between your business and your community is reciprocal and mutual, and that there is an intersection or diversity of people, of thought, of relationship that's present around your business, because that will give you the viability, sustainability, and fortitude to prevail, even in times like this, when we have a shelter in place, a quarantine, when we have a pandemic going on. That's the fortitude to getting beyond things like COVID-19, is sharing in the work together with your community. I'm Reesheda Graham Washington. It has been a pleasure to be here with you. I look forward to you following me and us becoming friends through Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, I'm Reesheda Graham Washington. And I look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much.
SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works.
Ready Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, S works. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, 'cause everybody going in. S works, so we keep it lit.